Alright, here we go, our first Halloween together. Now I was thinking for this video we do something a little different, because even though the show we're going to talk about isn't typical guidance guy fare, and also the series ended a few months ago so I know I'm behind the curve a bit, but this is a topic and a piece of entertainment that I've been wanting to talk about ever since I started this channel, and that show is 13 Reasons Why. When the show first came out, I had students at my school ask me if I had seen it, and since it touched on some pretty heavy topics and my students were seeing it, I needed to find out what the big deal was. And then I saw it. And I'm gonna say right now that if you love the show, if it's your jam, then that's great. This is not a judgment call on your tastes. This is simply my opinion, but I think the show is flaming hot garbage. Now listen, I wanted to love this show. I wanted 13 Reasons Why to be good. When Selena Gomez and friends said that they wanted to start a conversation about mental health and bullying and abuse, heck yeah, I wanted a show that did that. I wanted something like that for my students that would show them the importance of these issues and how to reach out to those in need and how to get help. But what we got was a bloated, pretentious CW-style melodrama that lost track of his mission statement after season 1. Mental health wasn't used as a conversation jumpstarter, it was used as a plot device. Suicide was shown not as a serious health concern that needs immediate attention, but rather a justifiable and effective tactic of revenge. Oh, are you talking to your dead crush like she's right in front of you? Don't worry about it. It's just a personality quirk and not a hallucination and a clear sign that someone is slowly losing touch with reality. Okay, in case you couldn't tell by the title, this episode's gonna be a little more ranty than usual. And I haven't even gotten to my main target yet, because the person I've got the biggest axe to grind in this show is Hannah's guidance counselor, one Kevin Porter. Look, I could excuse the actions of some of the characters in this show by saying, you know what? These are teens and they're gonna make mistakes and do dumb stuff. And to be clear, I'm not talking about the characters that committed actual felonies in the show, okay? But I can't and won't excuse Porter's actions and lack thereof as a fellow school counselor. He was unprofessional, unethical, and if he treated all his students like he did Hannah that fateful day, trust, he wouldn't be in the education game for very long. And if you watch the show, that's what ended up happening anyway. So what makes Porter the worst school counselor in media? I'm the guidance guy, and I'ma tell you why. And obviously, watch out for the spoilers for 13 Reasons Why. In this video, I'm going to focus mostly on the events of season 1. I know there are events and changes that occur with Porter and the other characters, but I'm gonna look at this at an almost exclusively 2017 perspective. So please don't come at me with, but this happened and then this person changed and this doesn't matter. I get it, I know, things changed and there's 3 more seasons that came after this. But in regards to Porter as a school counselor, season 1 is where the meat is, and that's where we're gonna go. Now, before I go into exact details as to why Porter is the worst counselor of all time, we need to take a moment to explain what exactly a school counselor does so we know what the standard is supposed to be. And I'm actually going to be using the terms guidance counselor and school counselor interchangeably during this video. Though most of us are used to saying guidance counselor, as someone who's in the field, we prefer to be called school counselors, as the term guidance counselor is a tad outdated and doesn't fully encompass everything that we do. And to answer the question I know someone's asking out there, well, if that's the case, why are you called the guidance guy? Well, because I'm a sucker for alliteration, alright? I mean, what was I gonna go with instead? Counselor Chad? I don't think so. I don't think so. So what does a school counselor even do anyway? If I were to ask you that question, your answer will likely depend on your experience with your counselor in school and when you had said experience. If you mostly interacted with your counselor in high school, you'd probably say something like they help you get into college, make sure you graduate, and can help you get into the best classes based on your ability. If you bring up your middle school counselor, you may also bring up helping with classes, but also being an emotional support if, say, your parents are going through a divorce or if you and your friend are having a drama. And if you have memories of your elementary school counselor, you'll most likely say they were the ones that helped you out when you were having a bad day, or they were the person that you talked to before you went to the principal's office to get your punishment for something that you did in class. And I want to know, what did your school counselor do? Let me know in the comments, and be sure that we're not naming names or schools, okay? I don't want to be putting anyone on blast like that. And in case anyone's curious, I personally have experience with both being an elementary and a middle school counselor. Now, even though everything I just said was true, we guidance counselors do all those things and more. We participate in parent-teacher conferences, we run a multitude of meetings, we make sure that parents and families and students are taken care of in a crisis, and we help teachers with the more challenging students. In fact, if you want to do me a favor, go ahead and thank a school counselor the next time you see one. Because there's so much that they do behind the scenes that most people don't even realize. Alright. Enough with the warm fuzzies. This is supposed to be a rant, right? Yeah, this is supposed to be a rant. Let's get angry. So, Mr. Porter, he's a high school counselor, so we need to take a look at his job description. But there's a little bit of a problem. It's not like we can just pull his contract and read his job obligations since, Liberty High isn't real. At least not the one portrayed in 13 Reasons. Though, fun fact, there are over 30 Liberty High schools in America. However, Liberty is located in Crescent, California, which is a part of Oakland, which itself is a part of Alameda County. So that's where we're going to start. According to the Alameda Unified School District's website, and I put a link in the description below if you're curious or if you're job hunting, high school counselors have 15 responsibilities listed. We're not going to discuss all of them one by one, so I'm just going to condense them to their main points. The first area is counseling students. Easy, right? I mean, it's in the name. They better be doing at least that. They're supposed to, quote, help students better understand themselves and others and assist them in overcoming personal, social, and academic obstacles. This is usually done through individual and group counseling. And in the school setting, counseling is not like, say, therapy, where you go see the counselor every week during fourth period for weeks on end. Since counselors are often responsible for at least a whole grade or alpha group consisting of hundreds of students, or if you're at the elementary level, it's the entire school, counseling in the school setting is meant to deal with issues on a short-term basis, within a few sessions or so. If your concern needs more intense attention, then the counselor should have resources to counseling and therapy outside of school to meet the student's needs. Which leads me to the next part, coordinating with school staff and the community. The exact wording in Alameda County is, assist in the establishment of good community school public relations, consulting with parents regarding educational, social, and career development pertaining to their child, and communicates with both school and community resources in support of students' educational needs. Guidance counselors don't work in a vacuum. While working with multiple students, we will in turn need to coordinate with teachers, administration, parents, and guardians, as well as the community in order to best serve the needs of our students. And this can take many forms, such as assisting a student's family that recently lost their home and is trying to pick up the pieces, or letting teachers know that the reason one of their students doesn't do work in their class is because they have to pick up a part-time job to help their family's income and is struggling with time management. In many cases, school counselors coordinate with seemingly unrelated groups with the common goal of student improvement, be it in or out of the classroom. The third aspect of the high school guidance counselor's role as it pertains to Mr. Porter is what we'll call facilitating academic achievement. Again, going back to Alameda's requirements, they've described this as, quote, counseling students regarding future occupational and or educational opportunities appropriate to the student's level of ability and interest. This comes in the form of helping students figure out their options for college, understanding the application and scholarship process, as well as career counseling for those who believe that college isn't the best option for them. Because, truth be told, not everyone needs to go to college. There are good paying jobs out there that don't require a 4-year degree. Just saying. And on the side, they also help students with scheduling that give them classes that best fit their ability. And like I said, there's a lot more that the document describes, and the exact role a counselor will have will vary from county to county and even school to school. But those were the main aspects that most school counselors will have. Now that we've covered what a school counselor is supposed to be, we're a little bit more equipped to tackle our friend over here, Mr. Porter. Now, before we can even get to the trash job that he did with Hannah, we need to talk about this girl. The girl in the middle of the whole series. Hannah Baker. Hannah freaking Baker. I'm not exactly sure where to start with her. I mean, she did start out as the main character of the show for season 1, and then was kept around in season 2 to remind people that she was still around. But then by the time seasons 3 and 4 came around, they just dropped the whole farce and forgot about her. I mean, look at this. Just look at this. When you go to the 13 Reasons Why wiki and look at the characters, who do you see? Or rather, who don't you see? Hannah ain't there. In order to find information about the character who is the reason for the show's existence, you need to actually type in her name as if she was just some minor side character from a couple random episodes. From season 3 on, this was the Clay Jensen show, son. This was his turf. But you know, no. I think I get it. Clay's hallucinations of Hannah weren't possibly schizophrenic episodes of a mentally broken young man. It was the show being meta. It was their way of passing the torch of main character down from Hannah to Clay. And when our boy finally got over his visions of her, that was our cue to know that Hannah was gone and it was Clay Jensen time. And his conversations with his imaginary almost girlfriend was just the transitionary phase of a show that failed miserably to talk about something actually important to just being yet another over-the-top teen murder mystery. But I'm getting off topic, aren't I? We could talk about all the stupid decisions that Hannah made in the first season, or the utterly nonsensical actions that she took that seemed to just simply create more trouble for her, but other people have already said that. My biggest problem with Hannah is not so much with her, but with how the writers decided to use her in the story. What do I mean by that? What I mean is that the writers decided to use Hannah as their catch-all for every kind of human suffering. The writers of this show decided it was a great idea in their allegedly super important realistic portrayal of the American teenage life to have a character to which every bad thing that could happen to a human being happened to one person. In 13 Reasons Why, Hannah has rumors spread about her, is betrayed by her friends, gets bullied, is both a victim and a witness of assault, and also saw someone die. I'm sorry, Spider-Man, Charlie Brown, and Carrie are all looking at this girl and saying, dang, I thought my life was bad. Not to mention that some of the things that Hannah mentions that are reasons for taking her life are just really dumb and petty things that don't mean anything, especially in contrast to all the other bad things that happened to her. Let's take Zach for example. She does a whole video about him, someone that she doesn't know in season 1 but apparently had a secret romance with over the summer that was retconned in season 2. But anyway, she does a whole video on him because he stole her notes. Really? A high schooler's gonna get that upset over someone being a jerk on that level? I'm sorry, what is this, 2nd grade? No! And can we talk about all the times that Hannah's been humiliated because the entire school found out something embarrassing about her? This just doesn't happen. The whole everyone in the school discovers something about someone on their phone at the same time cliche was already tired by the time 13 Reasons did it, and then they pulled that move 3 times. Listen, unless you go to a private school in the middle of nowhere, there's no educational setting where everyone in the place is connected to some massive WhatsApp group just in case someone wants to spill all the tea to all the school. Someone's getting left out. In fact, multiple somebodies, and not just the alternate universe version of New Girl over here. Somebody would have said something. Somebody would have let the authorities know that there was a whole network consisting of the entire student body that functioned solely as a broadcaster of shame. Also, not to mention, you know there's gonna be those kids that just don't care and are gonna ignore it, right? The only thing that's gonna make everyone look at their phones simultaneously, which you can't do in most schools anyway, it's gonna be something much more important than some gossip about a kid that most people don't even know about. We all go through rough times, especially in these times even more so than usual. But you're telling me that there's someone out there whose life is so cartoonishly garbage? Someone who gets exposed twice a month and has the absolute worst friends imaginable? I get it. Hannah's life was supposed to show how different factors can impact someone's mental health and can push them over the edge. But no one's life is such an unending cycle of pain and suffering. You're telling me that the only good things in her life were Clay and her parents? Why not share the agony? Have these events happen to different characters so that we can see how different people respond to trauma. And they kind of did that, but of course the writers couldn't execute that properly either. So what we got was a character that's defined by the worst thing that's ever happened to her and a forced cautionary tale about how school massacres happen. Ugh, this show is dumb. If the show really wanted to show the pain and suffering that depression can cause, maybe they shouldn't have had their main character get beaten down so much that the only way they could make things right was to end it all. That's not justice. That's not making things right. You're aggrandizing dangerous behavior. You're romanticizing poor coping skills. Those who suffer from depression need professional help, not a stupidly elaborate revenge plot overseen by some godlike 11th grader who happens to know everything about everyone, but never once actually does anything, but just follows Hannah's instructions like he's the keeper for Will or something. And that's another thing. What's the deal with Tony anyway? This guy happens to be omnipresent and has the dirt on everyone, but just sits on everything like an idiot until Clay shows up. And the show thinks that they're clever when they threw in this little line here.
Would you shut up, Tony? I get so sick of your little sayings and things that you point out acting all wise. You're like this unhelpful Yoda.
No, 13 Reasons. You don't get to be self-aware like that. You can't have a lazily OP character that can bring justice for Hannah whenever they want, and then try to bring out how half-baked that logic is later on. You want to know why Deadpool can get away with the whole fourth wall breaking shtick? It's because they earned it. You don't get to be self-referential unless you put in the work first, and you clearly didn't, and so that line and Tony's whole character doesn't even work at all. And why did it take you so long to get rid of the death scene? Actually, scratch that. Why was it there to begin with? Why do you think the mental health consultants for your show said not to put a death scene in there? Because they knew that showing it was not how you start a conversation, but rather how you create copycats. But you know what? It's okay though. They took the scene out. Not after the experts told them that it would be ethically dangerous and morally bankrupt, but after the copycats that they were warned about actually happened, and after the show had already made its money from it 2 years later. Funny how that works, huh? But before she goes and does the deed, she does try to reach out for help. She does come to Mr. Porter to talk about the assault that she endured for Bryce. And I do want to say that if you are going through a tough time, please don't make talk to someone be the last thing on your list. Find someone to talk with. And if they won't listen or take you seriously, find someone who will, because there's always someone who cares. And in this show's attempt to be all grimdark and real, they throw away any chance that Hannah's life could have been different, that she had no other choice, which is the exact opposite of what people in her situation need to hear. There is hope. Things can change. Your situation can get better. Yes, there is darkness in the world, and sometimes it looks like the bad guys win sometimes, but you can rise up and fight back. And the best part is that you don't have to do it alone. Reach out, find help, let someone know what's going on with you. The good news is that the writers of 13 Reasons Why did actually bother to show Hannah at least trying to do that. The problem is that the help that she was supposed to receive never showed up. Let me tell you, when I first saw Porter in season 1 of 13 Reasons, I was actually a little hopeful. I thought, yes, finally, Hannah is going to someone who can get her the help that she clearly needs. Because for some reason, Hannah never before this point ever went to an adult with any of the things that happened to her. And frankly, I don't blame her, I blame the writers. Because I can see a teenager going through hard times and not telling teachers, counselors, or any other adults about it. It's tough, but it's true. There are many students that go through absolute misery either at home, at school, or even both, and just never tell anyone. And again, if you are in a situation like that, make sure to reach out to someone and don't stop until you find someone who cares. But what's inexcusable though, is Porter's absolutely disgraceful display that he puts on for us in the closing moments of season 1. Let's break it down, shall we? After being attacked by Bryce, Hannah comes in to see Porter to try to get some help. And I'm gonna ignore the whole she bugged the conversation bit because that's just the writers being dumb and we already went there. So she comes in and Porter talks about how glad he is that she's on the calendar, apparently completely unaware that he can just call students into his office whenever he wants. If a student is on a counselor's radar, they can just call them in the middle of class. They don't have to wait for them to put their name on a sign-in sheet. And to his credit, he starts off strong. He's asking open-ended questions, he's trying to understand Hannah, but it doesn't take long before he starts to slip.
I need it to stop.
You need what to stop?
I need everything to stop. Just people, life.
Okay, stop right now. In that short clip, we see so many red flags that would just make any decent counselor go, hold up, we got a problem. Actually, earlier in this conversation, Hannah says that she feels empty and that she doesn't care about anything. And then she goes and drops the bomb about wanting everything to stop, including her life. This girl is screaming for help. She's straight up saying, please help me, I really don't have a reason to keep going. At that moment, Porter should have stayed right there in that moment with Hannah, asking her where her feelings of emptiness are coming from, what caused her to not care about anything, and how long she's been feeling that she wants everything to stop. But instead, she backs off and she says, I didn't mean it. And then he moves on and takes her word for it like a moron. No, you keep pressing. You reassure her that she's safe, that you're there for her. You don't just shrug it off and say, oh well, she said she was fine. Especially when you already had a feeling that you should be talking with her anyway. Now we are shown this flashback at the same time that Porter is having a chat with Clay, who at this point has gone full Batman and decided that he needs to take matters into his own hands. So we get the chance to see Clay grill Porter for his handling of the situation. And first off, this conversation shouldn't even happen in the first place, since the session between Hannah and Porter is confidential. You don't share that information with other people. And second, while Porter didn't disclose anything in that session, he knows he could just ask Clay to leave, right? In the present, Clay says at one point that he's thought about throwing himself off a cliff recently. Porter asks if Clay's ever thought of hurting himself or has actually hurt himself, which is a good question to ask, but it's funny how he never asks Hannah that question. You know, the girl who admitted to feeling empty. Also, any guidance counselor will tell you that when a student says they've thought about self-harm, there's a protocol that we have to go through to assess the level of severity, how often the thoughts happen, and depending on the district rules, somebody will determine if the student in question needs professional help. But what does Porter do? He essentially says, well, that was a close one, as if he caught himself before tripping in the hallway. He doesn't ask any deeper questions, he doesn't try to evaluate the severity of the threat, he just asks, have you ever done that before? He goes, no, and then it's like, cool. As Porter's talk with Hannah continues, she struggles to get words out, which is understandable given everything that's happened to her. And it's in this conversation that Porter pulls another move.
Did you have an encounter at the park?
An encounter. Yeah. You could say that.
Listen, Hannah, I'm not gonna judge you. But did anything happen that night that you regret?
Yes.
Are you embarrassed by what happened?
Yes.
Maybe you made a decision.
Oh my god, no, that's just what you assume?
What? You saw that too, right? We all just saw the same thing. We all just saw this guy throw down the victim blame card, right? And from this point on, the open-ended questions stop and the conversation turns into an interrogation. If your job is supposed to be securing the well-being of students, you don't do that by guilt-tripping them. And then he goes and says this.
Should we involve your parents or the police?
No.
Okay, Porter, here's the thing. You are what we call in the education field a mandatory reporter, and I'm gonna fill you in on what that means. It means that if you suspect someone is or has been abused in your line of work, you have to let the authorities know. There's no rule saying you make the call except if the person doesn't want to say a name. Then it doesn't count. You make the call. Yes, in order for the legal side of things to begin, you need a name. But you know who doesn't need a name? DCF. And in situations like this, there is no, we don't have to call the parents option. You let them know. She doesn't have to be in the room while you do it. If you hear something that impacts a student's life like that, You better let the parents know. Which leads to perhaps the most disgusting and thoughtless thing that he says in the whole exchange. He suggests that Hannah should just move on. This is exactly what I mean when I say that Porter is the worst counselor in media. What counselor would ever say that? Shoot, forget counselor. What kind of person would say that to someone who's been through a traumatic experience? A school counselor is supposed to be an example of empathy and compassion. But here Porter is so cynical, he's so emotionless that I question why this man is a counselor at all. I bet if Hannah went to any of her teachers at the school, they would give her better advice than this. But who knows? Given her luck, all her teachers would be misogynistic guys who wouldn't understand what the big deal was. Again, the show is insultingly stupid when it comes to its portrayal of reality and makes every adult look like an out-of-touch clown. In this moment, Porter essentially says, "If you don't give me what I want, I can't help you." Hannah is emotionally wrecked, yet he's treating his assistants like it's a negotiation. There's no place for quid pro quo here. And then telling her that her abuser will just graduate soon? He's acting as if Bryce is a hurricane that if she just rides out in the bunker long enough, he'll go away. I really hope people don't watch this scene and use that as a reason to not go to people for help when they need it. I understand, there's enough fear and vulnerability as it is. The fear of rejection, not knowing if the other person will understand or even if they care at all. And then you got people like Porter who in a single scene show that he barely cares. And honestly, to those of you who want to be a school counselor or mental health professional, I'm gonna tell you something. Our line of work is not like other careers. In some jobs, you can just get away with putting in the bare minimum and slacking off and still be able to get by. You can't do that when you're dealing with people and their pain. There's no faking it, no phoning it in because you just can't even right now. And you want to know why? There's two reasons. One, because people can see through that bull. You can't be a counselor and be fake or not feeling it. You have to be on and ready for those who you will come in contact with every single day. Because number two, your students, your clients, they need you to be there for them. You may be the first person they tell that they're going through an issue, and sometimes they may not even have all the words they need to articulate themselves. Think of it this way. A counselor is like a lifeguard, but instead of watching over an ocean of water, we watch over the sea of emotions. It's your job to ensure that you do everything you can to help those who are drowning in their fear, despair, confusion, or in Hannah's case, their emptiness. Can we save everyone? No. Sometimes we're there just long enough before someone else comes along to finish the job. Other times people just don't want to change, or they want to but fall into the same patterns. The job is not to save everyone, but to do your best in guiding hurting people through challenging times. And you can't do that when you're apathetic, uncaring, and coasting, which is exactly what Porter was in his one chance to help a girl in need. I'm gonna admit it, after seeing the clown show that was season 1 of 13 Reasons Why, I stopped watching the show. Sure, I would watch YouTube videos about the ensuing disaster that was the following seasons and the madness that they tried to get away with, but I couldn't bring myself to watch it because everything about the show was insulting to me on both a professional and personal level. And I know I could have talked more about events in later seasons, like Tyler's arc in season 2, or how the show tried to make us care about Bryce after they already killed him off, or the utter insanity of the Liberty High School shooting drill in season 4. Seriously, no school in any county does this. No school actually tries to simulate a shooting for the sake of realism. And considering that Liberty already had an almost school shooting, what soulless slime would actually think, no, we're not doing it, because the more I think about this show, the more the rant comes out of me. But hey, if you want me to tear this show several new ones, I'll gladly do it, because this insulting soap opera freaking deserves it. What we see in the first season of 13 Reasons is a high school student that has been through the worst that life can throw at her. Overdone melodrama aside, Hannah's struggles and trials were meant to reflect the battles that viewers like her might go through and how those battles can wear on a person and bring them to a very dark place. We also see that in the one time that Hannah tries to get help, we see that the only adult that she confided with, and the only adult that's arguably the most capable of walking her through this, listen to her and ultimately say, "You'll get over it." And I know that later on the show that he gets fired for his incompetence and he tries to make amends by going all vigilante on Bryce and tries to put him away at his trial, but it shouldn't have taken Hannah dying for Porter to change, because he should have known better from the start. Also, going from one extreme to the other doesn't help you either. If you're someone who's going through a tough time, please do not go through it alone. I've placed contact info to different hotlines in the description below as a reference point. I've placed the number for the National Suicide Hotline if you're watching this in America, and for those of you watching internationally, there's a link that lists hotlines by country. And don't be afraid to seek professional help if you feel you need it. Mental health is just as important as physical health, and especially in these times, we need to make sure our mental self is fit. Again, I typically don't do rants. This is actually my first one, but I really want to get my message out there. In all the hot takes about this show and its mishandling of critical subjects, I felt that someone needed to take to task the one person who could have done the most good for Hannah and massively failed. But you don't have to be a counselor to reach out to others. That was the whole point of Clay's little speech at the end of season 1. We need to care for others, to be mindful of how our actions and words impact others in ways we don't know. But because 13 Reasons was more interested in telling a salacious story of revenge, drama, and intrigue, their tacked on message sounded like a cheesy after-school special. But we do need more kindness, more understanding, and more empathy in our world. And it starts not with cheap emotional thrills, but with genuine, meaningful human connection. Thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments what other characters and franchises you'd like me to discuss next. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you know when the next video is ready. Until next time.